Welcome to the Cabinet of Science and Fiction.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really plunging into the pretty intriguing world of T. Henry Moray and his research into something he called radiant energy.
Yeah, that term itself is fascinating.
It really is. And this wasn't just about, one single gadget. It was more like a whole collection of ideas, observations, stuff that really challenged how people thought about energy back then.
Absolutely. It pushed the boundaries, or at least it claimed to. We have these accounts, these demonstrations he apparently gave.
Right, the demonstration.
Where his device supposedly powered lights. And not just normally, but like incredibly brightly.
And a flat iron, too, wasn't it?
Yes, even a flat iron, all without being plugged into, the wall socket or any conventional power source.
Imagine seeing that, just ordinary light bulbs, but burning way brighter than they should, this iron heating up super fast.
With no apparent plug. It sounds like magic, honestly.
It really does.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to, try and unpack the core ideas behind Moray's work.
Dig into it a bit.
Yeah, explore these phenomena he observed, or at least reported, and maybe touch on some of the mysteries that still kind of swirl around his claims.
There are definitely mysteries.
We'll look at potential energy sources he might have been tapping into, the unique components of his devices. Get ready for maybe some surprising turns.
Hopefully a few aha moments, too.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with that central concept, radiant energy. Moray believed in this sea of energy all around us, in the universe. What did that actually mean to him?
Well, it's interesting because, looking back now, that idea, that it kind of resonates with some modern physics concepts, doesn't it?
Like zero-point energy.
Exactly, zero-point energy. The idea that the vacuum of space isn't truly empty.
Right, it's buzzing with potential energy at the quantum level.
Precisely. So for Moray, this sea of energy wasn't just some abstract philosophical idea. He was convinced it was real, tangible, and he spent his life trying to build devices to actually harness it.
So he wasn't just thinking about it. He was actively trying to engineer something.
Right. He aimed to build machines to tap into this fundamental energy source. While he used the term sea of energy, modern science talks about vacuum energy. If he was onto something, it could change everything about energy.
Absolutely. And he didn't just theorize, right? There are these accounts, pretty credible ones sometimes, that he actually built devices that seem to work.
Oh, that's the core of the story.
So let's talk about some of those key observations, the inventions people reported seeing. Starting with the main one, the energy device itself.
Okay. So the accounts describe a device with some very specific parts. He had these special tubes.
Valves and oscillators, he called them.
Yeah, valves and oscillators, and this crucial component called a detector.
And how did it supposedly work? You didn't just flip a switch?
Apparently not. The accounts say you had to activate it, kind of kickstart it, by giving this detector a brief magnetic stroke, just a quick pass with a magnet. And then, incredibly, it could supposedly power electrical appliances, lights, heaters, motors.
And we mentioned the lights were unusually bright. People who saw this weren't just saying, oh, the light came on.
No. They consistently reported the lights were unusually bright and a very pure white color. Some even said it affected photographic film differently than ordinary electric light.
Wow. That detail really sticks out. It suggests whatever this energy was, it wasn't quite behaving like standard electricity off the grid.
Exactly. It implies a different quality of energy somehow. Then there's the other really curious thing. His sound pickup device.
Ah, yes, the long-distance listening thing.
Right. It apparently used crystal set technology, which was fairly simple radio tech for the time.
Like those old-timey radios you didn't need to plug in?
Kind of like that. But this thing was supposedly able to pick up conversations from miles away.
Miles? That's hard to explain with just normal acoustics, isn't it? Sound just doesn't travel that clearly over miles like that.
Not ordinary sound, no. It attenuates, it gets weaker, it gets distorted. So the thinking, or the speculation really, is that maybe it wasn't picking up normal sound waves.
So what else could it have been?
Well, some have suggested it might have been sensitive to something like infrasound waves, maybe surface waves that can travel long distances, very low-frequency stuff.
Okay.
Or perhaps even something called ion polarization waves, which sounds complex, but think of it as waves of charged particles moving together in a specific way.
Like a different way for information to travel through the air. Maybe linked to his plasma work.
Possibly linked, yes. It's a different mode of energy or information transfer than standard acoustics. And interestingly, he actually got some funding in the 1950s for classified research to improve this sound pickup.
Classified.
Yeah, but the results, well, they were never made public, which just adds to the mystery. Did he stumble onto something really significant there, maybe related to the same principles as his energy device?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Now, going back to the energy device, Moray himself really stressed the importance of ions moving, oscillating within a glow plasma. What was that about?
This seems to be really central to his whole concept. He believed that by creating and carefully controlling the movement of these charged particles, these ions inside this glowing plasma.
Like the gas inside a neon sign, but maybe more complex?
Sort of, yeah. A controlled plasma discharge. He thought that by getting these ions oscillating back and forth in a specific way, he could somehow interact with and draw energy from that fundamental background source.
The detector was key to this. What was in it?
The detector seems to have been the heart of it. Reports say it contained a mixture of materials, things like germanium.
Which is interesting in itself.
Very interesting. Also bismuth and various metallic sulfides, like iron sulfide, perhaps. And this is a key point. There are consistent mentions of small amounts of radioactive materials being part of the mix.
Okay, radioactive materials. That definitely catches your attention. What role could they have played? Were they the power source?
That's the big question. The idea isn't necessarily that they were the power source in a conventional nuclear sense. The amounts mentioned seem far too small for the reported power output.
Right. You wouldn't expect kilowatts from a tiny speck of radioactive stuff.
Exactly. So the thinking is more that they might have acted as a catalyst or an initiator. The radiation emitted could help ionize the gas in the detector, basically knocking electrons off atoms and creating the ions needed to form and sustain that glow plasma.
Ah, so like a spark plug, but using radioactivity to get the plasma started and keep it going.
That's a decent analogy, yeah. Moray had studied the work of earlier scientists, like Rutherford, who'd noted that some mixtures of radioactive elements could actually show more activity than the elements separately. And the faint light, the luminescence produced in those metallic sulfides by the radiation, might have also played a role in maintaining a surface plasma effect.
Okay, so this oscillating plasma, potentially kicked off or sustained by a bit of radioactivity, was maybe the antenna or the transducer to pull in this radiant energy.
Yeah, it seems to have been his core idea, yes.
So what did Moray himself think this energy source was? And what do people looking back on it now think?
Well, Moray himself, he was pretty convinced he was capturing what were then called ether waves coming from space.
The ether, right. That old concept of a medium filling space that light waves traveled through.
Exactly. That was a more accepted idea in the early 20th century. But if we translate his ideas into the language of modern physics, his sea of energy sounds remarkably similar to this concept of zero-point energy in the vacuum.
ZPE.
Right. So some researchers today theorize that maybe, just maybe, his devices found some unique way to stimulate or coherently activate this vacuum energy to draw usable power from it.
And then there's still the nuclear angle because of the radioactive materials.
Yes, that possibility is always mentioned. Some suggested maybe some kind of low-energy nuclear reaction or even stimulated decay was happening. But again, the reported power output, sometimes kilowatts, seems really disproportionately high for the tiny amounts of radioactive material allegedly involved. It stretches credibility based on conventional nuclear physics.
So maybe not one single source.
That's also very possible. It could have been a synergistic effect, a combination of factors. Maybe tapping zero-point energy, possibly influenced or enabled by the plasma state, which was itself initiated or sustained by trace radioactivity. Complex interactions.
Let's circle back to that germanium component for a second. The Moray valve. You said that was interesting. Why?
It's really interesting because of the timing. Moray developed this while trying to create a stable detector, apparently mixing germanium with bismuth, iron sulfide, maybe those radioactive traces we talked about. What's remarkable is that this specific component, this valve, reportedly acted as an incredibly sensitive detector for radio signals. So sensitive, in fact, that some accounts claim it allowed radios to operate without batteries or wall power.
Wait, like it was pulling power directly out of the radio waves themselves.
That seems to be the implication. As if it wasn't just detecting the signal, but somehow amplifying it, using energy drawn directly from the incoming radio waves, or maybe from that same background radiant energy source, enough to actually drive a loudspeaker.
Wow, and this was before the transistor was widely known or used?
Decades before, yeah. The transistor, based on similar semiconductor materials like germanium, wasn't announced by Bell Labs until the late 1940s. So here's Moray, back in the 20s and 30s, apparently creating a solid-state device that could detect and maybe even amplify signals, possibly drawing its own power.
That alone is pretty incredible. It suggests that even separate from the big energy claims, he had a very early, very unconventional understanding of semiconductor physics.
Precisely. It shows real ingenuity and experimental skill working with these materials long before they became mainstream. He was clearly exploring ways to interact with and amplify very subtle electromagnetic energies.
So beyond just the specific materials, were there broader engineering principles people think might have been involved in his main energy device? Like, how did he put it all together?
Yeah, looking at his notes, descriptions, and comparing them to patterns seen in other, let's say, novel energy device claims, a few ideas pop up.
Like what?
Well, the idea of abrupt ion motions seems important. Not just smooth oscillations, but maybe sharp pulses or jolts within the plasma.
Like hitting it hard, metaphorically speaking.
Sort of, yeah, creating very rapid changes. Also, the specific shape of the plasma might have been crucial, perhaps creating specific geometries, maybe vortex shapes, swirling patterns.
Why would the shape matter?
The idea, often linked to zero-point energy theories, is that specific dynamic geometries might help organize or cohere that random vacuum energy, making it extractable. Think of it like tuning a resonance.
Okay, interesting. Anything else?
There's also speculation about using opposing magnetic fields, what are sometimes called bucking fields, and possibly even counter-rotating parts within the device, although details are scarce.
So lots of dynamic elements, pulses, shapes, fields, maybe rotation?
Exactly. The overall picture seems to be about creating a system that's deliberately kept far from equilibrium with energy flowing through it in a way that encourages it to self-organize and draw in additional energy from this background source, the vacuum.
That idea of self-organization from chaos that connects to established science, right?
It does. Initially, the old view of thermodynamics suggested things only go towards disorder, but the work of people like Ilya Prigogine, who won a Nobel Prize for it.
Right, dissipative structures.
Exactly. He showed that systems that are far from equilibrium with energy flowing through them can spontaneously self-organize, creating complex patterns and structures. Think of weather patterns or certain chemical reactions.
So this provides a theoretical framework, maybe, for how a device could potentially tap into something like zero-point energy by setting up the right dynamic conditions.
It provides a potential pathway, yes. It suggests that creating order and harnessing energy isn't necessarily impossible just because the source is seemingly random if you can create the right kind of non-equilibrium self-organizing system. It wasn't just about the parts list, it was about the dynamics.
Right, the process. Now, this all sounds incredibly promising, or at least fascinating. But Moray's story, it isn't just about the science, is it? There's a dark side, too. The suppression claims.
Sadly, yes. That's a huge part of the narrative. His story is just marked by repeated, significant setbacks that seem, well, suspicious to many.
What kind of setbacks?
He'd achieve what seemed like real technical success, demonstrate his device to witnesses, sometimes quite credible ones, scientists, engineers, politicians.
And
then things would just fall apart. Business deals would collapse under strange circumstances. There were allegations, strong ones, of interference from governmental agencies. There are even accounts of agents, some say linked to the Rural Electrification Administration or other bodies, actually smashing his equipment.
Smashing his delicate tubes. Wow.
Yes. Destroying the crucial, carefully constructed components. And beyond that, there were threats, serious threats against him and his family. Even assassination attempts reported. He apparently became very fearful for his safety.
That's intense. Why? Why would someone on the verge of potentially solving the world's energy problems face that kind of opposition? What's the theory?
Well, it's a pattern that unfortunately seems to echo in the stories of other inventors who've claimed breakthroughs in unconventional energy. The usual suspect cited is the immense power of established energy industries.
Oil, gas, coal, the existing electrical grid.
Exactly. The fear that a disruptive technology providing cheap, decentralized energy could completely upend those multi-trillion-dollar industries. That's often put forward as the primary motive for suppression. The REA connection is particularly mentioned, and later congressional investigations apparently uncovered some things that added to the suspicion, but it's all quite murky.
A complex web of potential motives, definitely.
Oh.
And the strangeness didn't stop with the main energy device or the suppression, did it? There were these other weird phenomena he reported, like cold currents. What was that about?
Yeah, this is another one of the really baffling aspects of his research. He claimed that under certain conditions, his devices produced or conducted electrical currents that were cold instead of hot.
Cold electricity. How does that even work? Wires usually heat up.
That's the thing they usually do. Resistance causes heat. But Moray described thin wires carrying significant current that remained cool to the touch, and he even claimed these currents could pass through glass without melting it.
Pass through glass. That sounds like something out of science fiction.
It really does. And alongside that, he also made claims, especially later in his work, about witnessing low-energy transmutation of elements within his plasma tubes.
Changing one element into another.
Yeah.
Like alchemy.
Essentially, yes, but supposedly happening within his electrical discharges, without the massive energies you'd normally associate with nuclear transmutation in reactors or accelerators.
Okay, cold currents and transmutation.
Yeah.
These are pretty extraordinary claims.
Extremely extraordinary and very difficult to fit within our current scientific models. They haven't been independently replicated or verified, of course, but Moray seemed convinced of these observations.
Did he focus more on those later on?
It seems so. After the repeated destruction of his larger energy devices and the threats, reports suggest he became reluctant to rebuild the main machine. He apparently shifted focus more towards these smaller-scale plasma tube experiments, trying to understand the fundamental physics behind these bizarre effects he believed he was seeing.
So if we try to sort of wrap our heads around this whole complex story, T. Henry Moray, what are the main things we should really take away?
I think first and foremost, it's his relentless focus on the role of oscillating ions within a plasma. That seems to be the thread running through almost all his energy work. He kept coming back to that.
The plasma dynamics.
Right. Second, the Moray valve is a concrete piece of evidence of his ingenuity. Regardless of the bigger claims, it shows he was doing some really advanced, unconventional work with semiconductor materials and subtle energy detection, way ahead of his time.
A genuine piece of early tech, even if mysterious.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have these persistent, tantalizing claims and observations, the excess energy output, the super bright lights, the strange sound transmission, these ideas of cold currents and low energy transmutation.
Phenomena that point towards something beyond conventional science.
They certainly suggest that, yes, even if we lack definitive proof or explanation. It's also worth noting maybe that some later researchers, people like Paul Brown, who tried to replicate Alfred Hubbard's similar energy device.
Hubbard, another one of these figures.
Right. Brown found that principles involving weak radioactivity and circuits tuned to specific plasma frequencies seemed key. It kind of echoes Moray's focus on ion oscillations, suggesting maybe there's a common thread there in trying to tap into vacuum energy.
So connecting it back to us, to you listening, why should we care about this story from, decades ago? What's the relevance?
Well, I think the story of T. Henry Moray is just a really deep dive into the possibilities that might lie at the fringes of science. It hints at energy sources, ways of interacting with the universe that could be radically different from our current mainstream understanding.
It challenges our assumptions.
Definitely. And his demonstrations, whatever the ultimate explanation, clearly left a powerful impression on those who witnessed them. Many credible people vouched for what they saw, even if they couldn't explain it. It forces us to keep an open mind, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that huge question still hangs in the air. Did he actually manage to tap radiant energy from space like he thought? Or did he stumble onto some unique way to interact with zero-point energy through his mastery of plasma physics?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the trillion-dollar question. And it remains unanswered, one of the enduring enigmas.
And the suppression aspect, whether it was purely scientific skepticism or something more deliberate, that adds another layer of intrigue, making you think about how new, potentially disruptive ideas are sometimes received.
It certainly makes you think about the interplay between science, commerce, and power.
So this whole journey into Moray's world, it really leaves us with a provocative thought, doesn't it? How much do we really understand about the fundamental energy that permeates everything around us? And what incredible breakthroughs might still be out there, just hidden, waiting for maybe a different way of thinking in your perspective, or even just a lucky discovery?
Perhaps, as Moray seemed to believe, and as some modern theories hint, the key really does lie in understanding that intricate dance of ions and plasma, somehow resonating with the very fabric of the vacuum itself. It also kind of prompts a question for all of us,
Which is?
Are we collectively truly exploring all the possibilities? Or are we sometimes held back by our existing models, our ingrained beliefs about what's possible and what isn't? Moray's story is a powerful reminder that the universe might just hold vastly more potential, more energy than we currently grasp.
A humbling thought, definitely.
Cool.
Something to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for listening.
Until next episode.